Your time here is over." Marla's words sliced through me like shards of glass. Her steely gaze met mine, cold and unflinching. In her outstretched hand were 2 crumpled eviction notices. My tongue froze in my mouth as my daughter Ellie clutched my leg. I stammered, "What are you talking about? Get out, both of you." Marla flung the papers at me. "You have 2 weeks. This is our home," I shrieked. "You can't do this." Marla and I had never gotten along, but I endured her subtle digs and lacked warmth for my husband's sake. Dane could never see the manipulation behind her passive aggression. Our fairy tale romance bloomed quickly. Within a year, I was walking down the aisle, trusting Dane to provide the stable life I longed for. But my Prince Charming had one flaw: his overbearing mother. We compromised by living in Marla's sprawling guest house so she could help with Ellie. When Dane left for an overseas work assignment, the dynamic shifted. Marla's true colors emerged. Her demands became orders, her criticisms vicious attacks. I lost my autonomy, my place of belonging. I was a visitor in my own home. Marla smirked. "Oh, but I can, and I will. This is my house, my land. You are nothing but an unwanted guest." "How could you?" My voice cracked, years of unspoken hurts rising. "I have given up everything for this family." Marla stepped closer, her breath hot on my face. "Yet you have taken everything from my son," I staggered back. That's not true." "It is. You seduced him away from me, turned him against his own mother. You and your spawn don't belong here." Ellie began to cry, clutching my leg tighter. Rage and helplessness collided within me. "We're staying," I said firmly. "Dane would never allow this. He loves us." Something sinister flashed in Marla's eyes. "We'll see about that." She stormed upstairs, her footsteps booming overhead. I sank to the floor, Ellie curling into my lap. My mind raced over Marla's sudden cruelty. Had I missed signs over the years? Were there clues that she loathed my very existence? I thought of the snide comments, manipulative guilt trips, and undermining of my parenting. Yes, the clues were there all along. I just didn't let myself see them, blinded by hope and trust. The next morning, I awoke determined to stop Marla's scheme. With Dane overseas for 6 more months, I had to protect this household myself. As Ellie slept, I walked to the main house under the gray dawn light. I typed in the key code with trembling fingers. A red light flashed. Access denied. She changed the locks. I rushed to the garage side door. Locked. The back door, too. She had locked me out overnight, like a stray dog. Panicked, I ran to the front gate and dialed Dane's number. All I got was an automated message saying he was unavailable. Again and again I called. Nothing. The truth seeped in like ice through my veins. Marla had planned this meticulously. She had severed my connections, ensuring her actions went undeterred. I was utterly alone, my cries falling upon deaf ears. As lightning ripped through the bruised black clouds above, the first fat raindrops began to fall. I ran back to the guest house, my thin nightgown soaked and clinging. Ellie was awake now, her frightened eyes searching mine for answers. In them I saw my own helplessness reflected. At that moment, staring into my innocent daughter's eyes, a steely determination stirred within me. I would not let us end up on the streets. Surely there had to be help, someone who could overturn Marla's vicious scheming. I would fight tooth and nail to shield Ellie from harm. As thunder cracked ominously outside, I hugged Ellie tight. No matter what it took, I silently vowed justice would be served. The storm raged all night, sealing Ellie and I inside the guest house. When dawn broke, the locks remained unchanged. Marla had made her stance clear. We were trespassers now. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Come collect your things. You have 1 hour." Lugging suitcases, Ellie and I hurried through the downpour. Marla stood at the open front door, watching us with narrowed eyes. "My jewelry box?" I asked as she shadowed me from room to room. "Dane's laptop? Not yours to take," she said. I spun around. "You can't just steal our stuff. And you can't just steal my son," she shrieked. "Get what's coming to you and get out." I wanted to slap her. But Ellie's frightened eyes stopped me. We worked in tense silence, Marla's presence suffocating. When I reached for a family photo, Marla snatched it away. "You lost the right to display this when you stole my son from me," she sneered. "I didn't steal Dane," I cried. "We fell in love." "Ha!" She glared at Ellie, cowering behind me. "You schemed to get pregnant and trap him. Admit it." "How dare you?" I spat back. "You are monstrous." Marla stepped closer, eyes ablaze. "Get out before I throw you out myself." My hands trembled, yearning to claw at her. Instead, I grabbed Ellie and the last bags. Marla followed us to the doorway. "If I catch you here again, I'm calling the police," she said. "You disgust me." She slammed the door with finality. The echo reverberated through my bones. "What do we do now, Mommy?" Ellie whimpered. "We'll figure it out, sweetie." I stroked her wet hair, my resolve hardening. There had to be help somewhere. We trudged down the long driveway. The gate clanged shut behind us with deafening finality. I didn't realize where we were heading until we stood at the bus stop. It offered little shelter from the biting rain. An elderly woman peered at us from under her umbrella. "Are you all right, dear?" I wanted to cry and scream. Instead, I said calmly, "We are fine, thank you." I didn't want to burden strangers with my troubles. Surely I could handle this. The bus wheezed to a stop. As we climbed aboard, the driver called, "Hey, no dripping wet people on my bus." I froze. "Please, we have nowhere else." "Rules are rules, lady. Now get off." The doors slammed shut. Ellie whimpered again. My stoic facade cracked. We were drenched and homeless now, all because of Marla's cruelty. We walked for ages, it seemed, my feet blistered in my soggy heels. Ellie's steps slowed. Finally I carried her, my arms burning. The rain softened to a drizzle as we reached the city center. My socks grated with grit. Exhaustion and hunger clawed at me. But I soldiered on, avoiding the judgmental gazes of passerbys. Finally, I sank onto a bus stop bench, Ellie curling up beside me. Shivering and defeated, stranded in this strange, heartless place. Suddenly the bench shook as someone settled heavily next to us. A large, bearded man reeking of booze. I shifted away, shielding Ellie protectively. He leered at me. "Rough night, sweetheart? I can make you feel real nice." He made crude gestures. Revulsion and rage surged within me. In that moment, I hated Marla with every fiber of my being. She had reduced us to this, vulnerable, endangered, adrift. Her vengeance wouldn't just upend my world, but could destroy Ellie's innocence. As the man leaned closer, I hugged my daughter tight. With icy clarity, I knew, if it came down to it, I would kill Marla with my bare hands to protect this precious child. I grabbed Ellie's hand and fled from the leering drunk, his taunts ringing in my ears. My legs shook and tears blurred my vision, but I kept running till the bus stop was out of sight. Gasping for air, I sank onto a bench outside a cafe. Ellie climbed into my lap, her small body quaking with sobs that racked my heart. Why are people being so mean, Mommy?" I stroked her hair, a lump rising in my throat. "I don't know, sweetie, but we'll be okay." She gazed up at me with Dane's trusting eyes. In them I saw my fraying composure reflected back. I couldn't fall apart now, no matter how heavy the storm raging within me. Just then a waitress stepped outside, eyeing us warily. "Hey, no loitering here." Humiliation flooded me as wandering eyes paused to stare. Gripping Ellie's hand, we hurried on once more. As we walked, I overheard snippets of conversation at the bus stops and cafes we passed. Complaining about the rain, excited weekend plans, normal people leading normal lives. While Ellie and I wandered like pariahs, burdened by Marla's cruelty, no one spared us a second glance. By evening, blisters oozed in my shoes. My drenched cardigan provided little warmth as the rain picked up again. We took shelter in a metro station, huddling together on plastic seats. Commuters bustled past with annoyance or indifference. We were out of place in their orderly worlds. As we sat shivering, a gang of teenagers sauntered up. Their bold gaze raked over me. One of them licked his lips, calling to his friends. "Little fishies seem lost from the school. Maybe we help return them home?" They laughed at some vile secret joke. My skin crawled, but I met his eyes unflinchingly. "We don't want any trouble, thanks. Please just leave us alone." Their grinning leader leaned in, his hot breath assaulting me. "Oh, but we can show you ladies some fun." Just then a security guard noticed the commotion. The youth scattered into the crowds. As we rode the late metro home, Ellie asked in a small voice, "Mommy, why are people being so scary? Do we seem bad?" My heart shattered. My brave girl didn't deserve this. She needed nurture, not exposure to the dark underbelly of dispassionate society. This was all Marla's doing. As we walked the empty streets to the nearby shelter, bleak hopelessness washed over me. We were adrift with doors slammed in our faces every turn. Easy prey for urban ghouls. Out here we had no rights, no allies. The shelter staff were kind at least. They brought soup and blankets and let Ellie pick a battered toy from a donation box. but we slept fitfully on hard cots cramped beside other homeless people. The air hung heavy with sour smells of confined bodies, cigarettes, and unwashed clothes. Every noise jolted me awake, clutching Ellie close in the dingy dimness. By morning, my resolve solidified into cold fury. When normal society discards you without care, you must take justice into your own hands. Laws did not apply to us vagrants, so why should I play by rules that kept failing me and my daughter? As we gathered our meager belongings the next morning, a young woman hurried over. "Excuse me, are you Serafina? Someone left an odd message for you." She handed me a scribbled note that simply read, "I can help you. Meet at the Lion Plaza fountain at noon." My eyes narrowed. Was this some trick of Marla's, a trap to lure us and lock us away for good? Perhaps she had hired local thugs to solve her problem permanently. I crumpled the note, ready to toss it out. Then I paused, smoothing it on my knee instead. Whoever had written this seemed to know we needed help desperately. What did we have left to lose in hearing them out? I had to take the risk, for both Ellie's sake and for mine, because the fury simmering within yearned to burst forth, needing only a conduit. If this mysterious meeting granted me that chance, then so be it. Resolve hardened into reckless abandon, and just maybe a hint of hope flickered within. We would go to this Lion Plaza rendezvous, our future balanced on whatever awaited there, be it trap or lifeline. Lion Plaza loomed before us, a lion's statue guarding its glossy facade. Ellie squeezed my hand as we navigated smartly dressed professionals striding by with purpose. We stood out in our rumpled clothes, receiving sideways glances and wide berths. At the burbling fountain stood a woman scanning the crowds intently. As we approached, she broke into a smile. "Serafina? I'm so glad you came. I'm Nina." Her warm demeanor surprised me. I tensed, ready to grab Ellie and flee. "Did Marla send you? Is this some kind of trap?" Nina blinked. "You mean Mrs. Marlowe? Oh gosh, no, but it sounds like she has put you through the ringer." Her brows furrowed with concern. Warily I asked, "Then who are you and what do you want?" Nina gestured to a nearby cafe. Once seated with cups of hot chocolate, she began. "I'm a social justice lawyer. I got your case file recently." She showed me a brown folder bearing our family name. "I handle housing disputes and wrongful evictions." "So you can help us get our home back from Marla?" Hope and suspicion vied within me. "I'm certainly going to try. What she has done is illegal on so many grounds. As Dane's wife, you have as much right to that home as she does. I just need some details to build a solid case." Over the next hour, the full story poured out of me. Years of subtle abuse, feeling unwelcome in my own house, Ellie and I cast out and cut off like criminals. Nina's outrage grew. "This is absolutely reprehensible. Don't you worry, I will fight tooth and nail for you. That terrible woman needs a wake-up call. Please let me help you seek justice." Her vehement support felt alien after days of indifference from society. I found myself nodding and placing tentative trust in this fiery stranger. "So what now?" I asked. "Do we have a decent shot against Marla's lawyers?" "More than decent," Nina declared. "I did some digging on Mrs. Marlowe. Did you know she faces federal charges of tax fraud and misuse of pension funds?" I gaped as she showed me printed articles detailing Marla's alleged shady financial activities. "This gives us serious leverage," Nina continued. "I say we force mediation to regain access to your home ASAP, then pursue full financial restitution for these past weeks. Marla owes you big time." My mind reeled, hope and hunger for vengeance tangling within. Nina gripped my hand. "I won't rest until justice is served. That I promise you, Marla picked the wrong girl to mess with this time." Her steely smile mirrored the cold determination crystallizing within me. The lesson was clear. In the face of adversity, the meek acquiesce while the fierce rise up. Gathering my courage and outrage, I would channel them with precision to cut Marla down to size. The days that followed passed in a blur. Nina filed injunctions while I gave statements to investigators regarding Marla's financial fraud. Serving her eviction notices felt deliciously poetic. For the first time I held power while she scrambled for footing. Soon we had a court date where Marla would have to publicly account for wrongful eviction, abuse, and misuse of my husband's assets. The night before I lay awake, playing out confrontation scenarios. Marla's demise became an obsession, lighting my days with purpose. Nina suggested forgiveness may bring me peace. I disagreed. Only seeing Marla stripped of her pride, wealth, and status would satisfy me now. She had awoken a vindictive fury that would only be quelled by her absolute ruin. My dreams held no mercy either, featuring Marla begging on bare knees for pardon I would not grant. I wanted it in writing that she renounced all rights to our family. I longed to grind her face into the dirt, emotionally, financially, existentially. She had to fully grasp my suffering. In the golden courtroom light next morning, I cradled Ellie close. My fury awaited its reckoning with bated breath. One way or another, Marla would pay the toll for her cruelty today. Of that I was wholly certain, without shred of doubt or hesitation. Justice would be done, by law or by my own hands if needed. The click of Marla's heels echoed like gunshots through the hushed courtroom. I steadied my nerves as she approached the stand, halting mere feet from me. Her icy glare bore through my skull. The hearing progressed efficiently thanks to Nina's thorough documentation of Marla's misdeeds. As the judge reviewed signed testimonies, Nina leaned over. "The law is on our side, but she's refusing to settle. Get ready, she wants blood." When Marla took the stand, her voice filled the room. "These allegations are preposterous. I devoted my life to my son. Then this woman seduced him away with an intentional pregnancy." She jabbed a finger viciously in my direction. "They sponged off my home for years before turning my own son against me." The room erupted into objections as she continued spewing venom about my treachery and deceit. The judge pounded his gavel impatiently while my nails carved crescents in my skin. "Enough!" The judge ordered Marla to restrict her statements to facts. I wanted to leap over the benches and gag her myself. When her diatribe ended, Nina rose swiftly. "Do you deny committing financial fraud repeatedly for decades, including this past month?" "Certainly not." Marla's glare darkened. "Unethical accountants made clerical errors I intend to rectify." "Interesting." Nina raised documents detailing Marla's credit card debts and bad loans. "So forging your son's signature to make stock market payments cleared in his name this year alone was just a clerical error?" The courtroom stirred. Marla visibly blanched but quickly regained composure. "As I said, errors occurred due to accountants I clearly cannot trust anymore. Well, as per signed legal affidavits." Nina proceeded to outline witnesses testifying to Marla's emotional abuse and controlling behavior towards me. Dane's secretary confirmed intercepting my calls for help on Marla's instructions. With each damning revelation, I relished watching Marla's facade crumble. Her fingers worried the pearls at her throat continuously. Under the weight of facts, her web of lies collapsed, strand by strand. Finally, Nina concluded by attesting the eviction itself was unlawful on multiple grounds. As closing statements ended, palpable tension choked the room. When the gravel struck, my heart leapt. Given factual evidence, the court rules in favor of the plaintiff, upholding her legal rights to the household and associated assets. A crashing noise made heads swivel towards Marla. Pearls scattered across the floor where she had ripped her necklace off in fury. 2 armed guards flanked her as she trembled in outrage. When Nina squeezed my hand, the knot in my chest finally loosened. I wanted to melt in sheer relief. Instead, I said clearly, "Thank you, Your Honor, for delivering justice today." Marla spat venom at me till the guards escorted her out. The room cleared swiftly, people shaking my hand and commending my courage. In glorious vindication, I signed the court orders granting me power over the house, assets, and staff. "We did it," Nina cried, hugging me gleefully. I let out a long breath, feeling drained and almost disappointed. Somehow Marla's slow unraveling hadn't satisfied me enough. I craved to personally snap her composure, not just legally defeat her. As if reading my mind, Nina said gently, "I know you hoped for an emotional apology too, but the law delivered justice regardless. Focus on moving forward now, away from toxicity and toward stability and peace." I nodded, knowing she spoke wisdom. But my heart still snarled for retaliation, not yet sated. I yearned to wring Marla dry myself. As we stepped out into the warm sunset, I checked my phone out of habit. A text from Dane glowed on the screen, my heart stopping. "Boarding flight home. Can't wait to see your faces when I surprise you tomorrow." I read Dane's text again, my stomach churning. How would I explain these harrowing months to him? Worse still, how would Marla twist events to vilify me instead? She would undoubtedly ambush him first. As Nina drove us to a hotel for the night, I agonized over what awaited at home. I had to intercept Dane before Marla's selective version poisoned his mind. At dawn, I was a bundle of nerves pacing the modest room. Today would test the limits of Dane's devotion. Surely our marriage could withstand his mother's schemes? Surely he knew my spirit, my steadfast commitment transcending the ugliness birthed of late. My phone flashed with a text summoning us home urgently to discuss recent concerning incidents. My heart sank, suspicions confirmed. Marla had already sunk her claws into my unwitting husband. The drive home stretched endlessly. I rehearsed defenses against imagined attacks. Ellie dozed, blissfully unaware of the viper's nest awaiting us. At long last, the imposing iron gates of Marla's manor swung open. Memories, tender, tempestuous, and traumatic, flooded my senses. In the foyer stood Dane, travel-worn but whole. Our eyes met, and in his deep brown gaze swirled bewilderment, hurt. And was that wary suspicion? Before I could move, he stepped forward, enfolding me in a hug that felt perfunctory. I heard Marla's shrill voice from the sitting room spewing her fictionalized version, no doubt. Dane released me, holding me at arm's length. "What happened here?" Mother said, well, she said. Confusion creased his handsome face, once untroubled by doubts. I opened my mouth, but Marla swept into view, an imposing specter in black silks. "Dane, thank goodness you've come." She clung to his arm possessively. "This woman has lost her wits, I fear. She served me outrageous legal notices while you were away, even called the police with wild accusations." "That's not true," I cried. "She abused and evicted Ellie and I illegally. I have court orders." "Lies." Marla's eyes blazed. "She tried ransacking our family assets, turned sentimental staff against me, who I treated like my own." Dane looked utterly bewildered, gaze ping-ponging between us. As the shrill accusations overlapped, he held up a hand forcefully. "Enough. Clearly there is more here than I grasp. Mother, let Serafina speak without interruptions. I think mediation tomorrow will do us good." I exhaled in relief. Dane's integrity shone through despite the mudslinging. However, his ensuing aloofness stung that night. We slept in separate guest rooms at his insistence to remain impartial for now. It churned my gut imagining Marla's poison seeping into intimate crevices of our marriage. The next evening, Dane gathered us in the rosewood-paneled study. Marla sat stone-faced, over-roused, and under-eye bagged, her gaze promising revenge. I stated our case calmly, then presented documents corroborating events, police reports, witness testimonies including those of former staff Marla had fired. With each betrayal revealed, her expression curdled further. "Why did the court rule fully in Serafina's favor if these accusations held no merit, Mother?" Dane asked finally. Marla stammered vainly, but vicious insults dried up under his probing stare. I concluded gently with empathy for family bonds fracturing under duress. Appeals for reconciliation hung in the air but were met only by Marla's scoffing dismissal. Dane passed a weary hand over his eyes. "I see enough evidence to understand gross injustice occurred in my absence." He took my hand then, a healing salve to my battered spirit. Marla rose, livid. "You would pick that woman over your own mother. She has bewitched your mind." Dane regarded her evenly. "There is no question of picking teams here. I am simply acting based on facts and principles we all should uphold." His unflinching morality tempered the lingering ache for outright revenge in my heart. Instead, grace took seed there. Our new life bloomed beautifully free of Marla's shadow. Her appeals against the court orders failed repeatedly. With money recovered from her years of financial deceit, I nurtured dreams forlorn in stale air. Ellie thrived with Dane's loving mentorship. 6 peaceful months passed before Detective Morris rang one morning. Marla had overdosed last evening on prescription pills mixed with vodka. Her parting note left no doubt she intended the timing to devastate Dane. One final vengeful scheme from the grave. Dane wept over her portrait. I shed no tears, feeling only the relief of knowing her lifelong efforts to destroy our happiness had ultimately destroyed her instead. I dropped the phone, shock reverberating through me. Marla was dead, by choice. The room tilted as I sank into a chair, hugging myself against an odd chill. Somehow it felt anticlimactic for her toxic presence to simply wink out overnight. After decades devoted to criticizing my every breath, she robbed me even of closure by exiting on her own terms. She remained an infuriating enigma I had futilely battled. In losing, perhaps her solitary victory was retaining that mask of mystery veiling innate darkness. Dane returned home shaken that evening. Police had discovered litters of alcohol stashed under Marla's bed, despite her abstinence pledges to us over the years. Her unsent letters unleashed vitriol, blaming me entirely for her miserable isolation. Even beyond the grave, she spewed blame on her chosen scapegoat. I should have felt fury or frustration. Instead, profound sadness for squandered generosity washed over me. Despite Marla's efforts to eclipse my spirit, she had only eclipsed her own. Weeks passed in a daze helping Dane handle her estate. I had worried her death may drive an irreparable wedge of grief between us, but it brought epiphanies that tightened our bond instead. Dane examined bank activity, exposing Marla had embezzled vast sums from family ventures for years. She had deceived him down to exact dollar amounts on trust fund statements. Her betrayal ran bone deep, though he had forgiven and indulged her lifetime. I knew that pain intimately myself, of realizing your place and worth in a loved one's life was but mirage and illusion. No matter how selflessly or wholeheartedly you gave, it faded to nothing through twisted lenses of selfishness. Maybe that's why Dane and I grew closer after her passing. We finally recognized each other as kindred spirits equally scarred. Our solace emerged in long overdue honesty. With Marla's death, the burden of unrealized expectations lifted too. I observed changes in Dane. Steadfast gentleness gave way to playfulness and open affection. Freed from her critical presence, our marriage deepened roots resilient to the storms weathered. Soon lighter news turned attention to the future. Our family would grow with a new baby come winter. Dane was elated, immediately discussing plans for the nursery and making educational investment portfolios. When we told Ellie she would be a big sister, her joy lit up the room. The baby can have all my old toys. I'll help take care of it too. We'll be gentle, I promise. Her innocent excitement sparked an idea that Dane and I mulled for months. Ultimately, we signed custody papers granting us legal guardianship of Marla's youngest niece, Alexandra. Raising a 3-year-old and newborn simultaneously was daunting, but we were determined to carry on Marla's legacy with the right foundations. Maybe symbolic redemption also wove through our intentions. Alexandra was a sunny child despite her own turbulent past. As I braided her hair each morning, my heart swelled with fierce protectiveness for her future. Late each night, Dane and I would tuck both our slumbering girls into bed with whispered affection. Then we would linger over photos of Marla through the decades, beautiful bride glowing under her veil, doting young mom cuddling her only son. I recognized myself mirrored across time in her lingering gaze at newborn Dane. That primal urge to nurture life's most precious gift transcended even our bloodied history. Perhaps inner humanity bound us all still, however hidden beneath churning tides of bitterness or blame. If one bothered piercing the surface far enough, flickers might emerge from even the murkiest depths. Glimpses swam through my mind then, Marla adjusting my gown's necklace moments before I married her son, her uneven attempts at baking Ellie's birthday cake yearly, brief interludes of almost connection, but they lasted mere moments before malice yanked Marla under again. And so our turbulent dance endured years, never fully losing rhythm, until the still silence of loss muted music, twisted by ire. In peaceful twilight glow now I contemplated her portrait displayed in honor. Lingering shadows yet marred her likeness for me. With sighing acceptance, finally I let dulled burdens slip their stubborn hooks from my soul. Tomorrow's dawn felt a shade brighter already. I awoke before dawn, pulled from sleep by an unfamiliar pang. Today was the anniversary of Marla's death. 1 year since her last malevolent strike carved grief between Dane and I. Yet looking back, times darkened had ushered in relating with newfound richness. Loss had laid foundations for growth beyond imagined. I tiptoed downstairs where Dane stood gazing out the window, coffee mug untouched on the table beside him. Wordlessly, I slipped my hand in his, sunlight slowly illuminating our reflection in the glass. I was dreaming about her last trips to the galleries with me, Dane said softly. She taught me to cultivate an eye for brushstroke textures. We would debate interpretations for hours. I listened silently, no longer bristling when Marla inhabited his musings. The past year had taught me compassion for pains born of love's complexity. Dane turned suddenly, urgency in his voice. I apologize for being unavailable when you both needed me most. It gutted me realizing how she failed you so selfishly. I squeezed his hand, our solace flowing freely sans pride's restraints. You kept faith despite every odd. What we endured revealed who truly had eyes to see our essence. Dane revealed he had permanently closed Marla's embezzling accounts, redirecting funds to trust funds for Alexandra and our sons. I should have managed her crooked finances more astutely myself, he admitted. Now the future will know rectitude. As we spoke, a fresh vista emerged, one with crystal air granting clear sight to veil-piercing eyes. A transformed topography of vulnerability bridging distances isolating. The day passed peacefully, the house filled with Alexandra's giggles as Ellie inducted her new doll. By evening, solemnity veiled Dane's eyes again at Marla's favorite restaurant. Had resentment marred our remembrance despite resolve otherwise? Upon returning, lively chaos greeted us instead. The kids had strewn living room cushions, creating a play fortress. Their ecstatic creativity eddied around Dane and I as we sank down smiling. Weight of unspoken hurts seemed to lift from our shoulders. As I rested my head on his shoulder, Dane said gently, "This spaciousness was unavailable while Mother dominated our psyche and home, but Alexandra embodies openings still possible. Truly, shadows could not fully overwhelm light bold enough. Through youthful resilience, goodness had carved inroads revealing glinting hopes. Over a blaze fireplace, I read a framed Rilke verse newly mounted. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror, just keep going. No feeling is final." Those timeless lines now evoked Marla rather profoundly. Our interwoven lives testified to the deceased never fully absenting from the living they marked. Through memory's continuous stream, echoes rippled beyond departures defying finality. Emotions distilled over fraught decades swirled continuously between us all still, longing for reconciliation. So I breathed deeply, inviting understanding to settle any lasting resentment. The past's grip had loosened sufficiently by now, surely. I stared at dancing flames like a seer seeking revelation in glowing embers. An urge emerged to voice words never uttered to Marla herself in life. So I whispered into vast eternity beyond, "May you discover the abounding love eluding your reach here, where souls reconvene unfettered." Something like consecration flowed through the quiet room just then. Dane held me closer, this newfound bond a sanctuary mooring us against fitful spirits still roaming the psyche's foggy terrain. Soon, children's bedtime rituals claimed our attention fully. We immersed in goodnight songs and silly rhymes, shielding their dreaming from this date's morning. As both girls drifted asleep, Dane asked, "Do you think she found any sort of peace?" I recognized the search for validation in his eyes, that inner light had breached Marla's darkness somewhere. I touched his cheek, more tenderness than certainty rooting me. That is beyond our judgment now. We walk this terrain relying on our own light instead. Outside, the inky night sky glimmered with stars defying comprehension, yet radiant still. No matter how dense the darkness, luminosity endures beckoning vision higher. On this truth we could stand firm.